while being uprooted in my life and traveling around with my fiance from hotel to hotel while we renovate our home we are bringing to California. Citizen Sleeper has acted as a grounding ritual that I look forward to most once I get settled after a long day of doing contracting work with her uncle, renovating, and spending money. Or rather, Citizen Sleeper acts as a dreamy dystopian world that I can bury my attention into for a couple of hours and battle with capitalism in a virtual world instead of the physical one that I find myself in. Citizen Sleeper is a nearly purely text-based RPG that had me hooked from starting it up. A lot of the segments in the dialogue and the nature of the character we play, called a sleeper, can be very abstract, and is a game that chooses to explore the nature of consciousness linked with AI, and that, interwoven with an extreme form of capitalism plus corporate power, which you could argue will be prevalent themes in the coming future. Whoever wrote the text for the game needs a raise because such vivid pictures of the eye, which is where we find ourselves on in a space station type of city, is painted so well that I can visualize the descriptions in my mind paired with the reference artwork that implants this whole world through my peanut brain trapped inside my thick skull. The beautiful thing about this game is that the format emulates a normal daily life inside of this colony. Citizen Sleeper is a game that works in cycles. On a new cycle, which is like a day cycle, it's never really explained what constitutes a cycle, by the way, other than when you just go to sleep, it just starts a new one. So I think it's safe to just assume that it's a 24-hour cycle. The cycle system gives you limited actions you can perform in the form of dice, which you must perform in one cycle in order to progress the game. The quality of the action is dictated by the dice you roll, 6 being the best roll and guarantee you can have a positive gain from an action, and the lowest being 1, which at best gives you either a neutral or negative result from an action. Everything in between changes the chances of having positive, neutral, or negative responses from actions. We are a robot person. To save you the explanation for later, so not only do we need to manage a hunger meter of sorts, we also are tasked with taking care of a decaying robotic body that cannot maintain itself because of the lack of an immune system installed in. It's weird. It's a lot. We need to make sure we can get an injection that keeps our immune system from attacking itself, which of course is super expensive, and most of our time spent is working to be able to afford food and these injections while living inside of an empty container. The only way our poor robot life can get any better is later on using scraps to build our own makeshift apartment. Life as a sleeper is rough. The Eye is a open world that is purely text-based. Any of these options you can click and will show you the results of performing actions right above the slots where you can drag the dice. Below them sometimes will be results from the amount of action you take towards certain activities on the Eye. These are quest lines that progress with actions and are typically good quest lines tied to the activities that allow you to meet other citizens trying to build a life on the space colony that can assist you in your quest of both figuring out who you are and escaping from such hard living conditions. There are also time-dependent or bad quest lines that typically have a punishing result tied to them in the form of being extorted for resources or worse, dying, but you have to use your dice to progress through the cycles. You are forced to act. So feel free to just choose anything, really. For my playthrough, I went with the Machinist. The Machinist gets a bonus in the Engineer stat, but gets a debuff in the Endure stat, so it's encouraged to play more safely and calculated with the Machinist. When you come into the Eye, you are eventually told that you were one of the only survivors off of a ship that was blown up, and your sentience is a copy of a human being that is still alive. And it's almost described like it's James Cameron's Avatar. You're told that you are being controlled remotely, but it doesn't end until this robot you are controlling dies. That being said, does consciousness imply that we are human? What makes a human human? A book named Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep makes some pretty cool arguments that Blade Runner was based off of, so if you want to go into depth with those questions, I definitely recommend that book if you like sci-fi, and this game of course, because it's like a novel as well, a really good one. Being a machinist was great for a lot of skilled labor, which meant I always had some form of work through the playthrough, but in situations that required me to be great socially and not to be taken advantage of, my character suffered. My credits fluctuated constantly, credits being the currency that I uses, with times being in surplus only taking a few days to fly back down to nothing. Trying to escape survival mode here is nearly impossible, and every cycle brings a new challenge. Since we are a digitized consciousness, we stumble across an ability that we have as a result of that. We can enter a neural network as a deity of sorts that can extract data from multiple sources inside of the eye, from gang members, corporate members, computers, and many more. There's a hunter and a killer that roam in the neural network that attempts to exterminate us, though, if we aren't conscious of our actions in this realm, with a whole questline to help find a resolution and safety inside this unseen world, selling data to make a buck. Just like Facebook. This game's ability to create dilemmas that are meaningful is uncanny. There's a major scene where you can escape from the eye, which is one of the ambiguous goals you're handed when figuring out what to do with your robot self. The dilemma that we are faced with is being able to escape with friends, at the cost of being a tool to track the team you go with, and never finding any details about your real human self. Being faced with that choice, I stayed on the eye, facing nearly certain death on the eye with the hopes that I can find the truth about who I am, and to be able to finish the one too many quest lines I had going on in the eye. The world building reflects how the real world really can be, with too much to do, not enough time and energy, and neither anyone being right or wrong if you take a step back and look at the situation. This creates a really interesting narrative for me because it faces us with an ultimate question. Why is it that we carry on? What is the driving force in our lives? Choosing to stay on the eye even shows me, the player, that promises of a perfect, easier world and life isn't necessarily the most important to me. Then what is? Every time a cycle passes on the eye, I'm asked that question by the world. Every effect in Citizen Sleeper asks me, of what cause will I choose? When dialogue and choices are fed to me, which ones will I personally choose beyond the good and evil that is fed to me? Existential and abstract is my middle name. Moving on. When I made the choice to stay on the eye, I began to grow more mastery over the eye, to the point where survival became trivial, and more money was being held onto. This allowed me more time to focus on quests with a commune on the neglected aspect of the eye, full of plant life, ironically, and, more importantly, to begin helping those in need on the eye from a place of pure help, rather than it being necessary and being transactional. There's a questline where you can help a couple of refugees be able to return and help their group, and a contractor you can work for that is expanding the hub, which is a high society, to put it quite literally. You need to use an elevator to get there. I was able to lose my tracker with the help of Fang, even with him being so flaky and ambiguous about knowing how to remove the tracker. Thanks, Fang. This made me lose ties to Ethan, who was a bounty hunter that was an alcoholic, originally trying to kill me, that now was leveraging use as a bodyguard for me in exchange for working off his debt at the compressor bar in the eye. Why the hell would I do that when I showed you so much grace, Ethan, and you tried to kill me multiple times and played with my life as if I was a pawn in your game? What a dickhead. All my homies hate Ethan. I just had to go on a tangent and get that off my chest, but using this as an example shows you how interwoven and great the writing of this game is, and how it feels like a living, breathing character that you're playing in a whole ecosystem. The endgame in Citizen Sleeper also posed to me a question. Is it the people who are creating systems that hand them down to multiple other people, keeping the society orderly and sane? Or rather, is it the people handed the systems, using the systems as individuals, who keep society afloat? Can we survive without either? Will both always be there? If I get too confused, I can just run to the commune out here. If there's any visual novel worth playing, it's this one, to put it shortly, if you made it to this point. It's crazy to call this a visual novel with how many options you have with progressing Citizen Sleeper, and how things can be time dependent, having a noticeable effect on the narrative. It leans towards tabletop RPG because of this, and I don't say that just because it uses dice. Pick up your Sleeper, the Machinist, Operator, or Extractor, and see if you can make it out of the late stage capitalism with your robot alter ego in one piece. Thank you.